Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Speak Smart podcast. Today, we're going deep, doing a deep dive into something that sounds, deceptively simple, listening and repeating. But trust me, these are bedrock skills, and they can unlock some incredible fluency. They can help you sound more like a native English speaker. And here's the cool part. These techniques work whether you're just starting out learning English or you're looking to, fine-tune your already pretty impressive skills.
Yeah, and what's so often overlooked is how these techniques tap into, the very essence of language acquisition. It's not just about, memorizing vocab lists or grammar rules. It's about immersing yourself in the rhythm, the intonation, even those micro pauses that native speakers use, instinctively.
You're right. It's like absorbing the music of the language, right? But I'm really curious to explore how we can move beyond just passive listening to actively using these techniques to supercharge our progress.
Absolutely. And one of the most powerful techniques is shadowing. You're essentially trying to keep pace with a native speaker in real time, listening and repeating almost simultaneously. It's like a mental workout. It forces your brain to process the language at a faster rate.
Oh, wow. That sounds intense. But I can definitely see how it will push you to pay attention to every detail, pronunciation, rhythm, everything.
Yeah.
Isn't it a bit overwhelming though? Especially for beginners.
It can be if you jump into the deep end right away. But the beauty of shadowing is you can start with slower, simpler content and gradually increase the pace and complexity as you get more comfortable. Think of it like training for a marathon. You wouldn't start by running 26 miles on day one.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. So how can our listeners start incorporating shadowing into their daily routines?
Well, you don't need to dedicate hours to see results. Even just 10 or 15 minutes a day can make a huge difference. You can use short YouTube clips, language learning apps, even just a few minutes. Listening to a podcast like ours.
That's encouraging. And I imagine that consistency is key here, just like with any skill.
Exactly. Short, regular practice sessions are far more effective than trying to cram everything in once a week.
Now, shadowing seems like a fantastic way to improve your overall fluency. But what about those tricky moments where English words seem to blend together? When what are you doing becomes what you're doing?
That's a great example of connected speech, a crucial aspect of sounding natural. And shadowing can definitely help you pick up on these patterns organically. You're forced to listen so closely that your ears become attuned to the natural rhythm of spoken English.
So it's not just about perfecting individual words, but also about understanding how they flow together in a sentence. That brings us to another concept. I heard a lot about chunking. Can you unpack that for us?
Sure. Chunking is about recognizing that we don't process language as individual words, but as groups of words that naturally go together. Think of how are you? We don't think of it as three separate words, but as a single unit of meaning.
That's fascinating. So instead of trying to understand every single word in isolation, our brains learn to recognize these common phrases as a whole. Does that then help us speak more smoothly?
Exactly. When you start thinking in chunks, your speech becomes more fluid and natural. It's like having preloaded phrases ready to go, which makes you sound less robotic and more like a native speaker.
So it's almost like learning the choreography of a dance instead of just memorizing the individual steps. That's such a great analogy. Now let's move on to the other half of our dynamic duo, repeating. It might seem basic, but I bet there's more to it than meets the eye.
Absolutely. It's not just about parroting back words, but about truly embodying the speaker. Think of it like an actor stepping into a role. They don't just memorize lines, they analyze the character's emotions, motivations, even their physicality.
I love that analogy. So when we're repeating, we should be paying attention, not just to the pronunciation, but also to the pace, the intonation, even the subtle nuances of the speaker's delivery. It's almost like trying to capture their essence, right?
Precisely. And while it might feel a bit awkward at first, the more you practice, the more comfortable you'll become. Eventually, it'll become second nature.
That's encouraging to hear. Now, one thing that often trips me up is feeling self-conscious when I'm practicing my English. Any tips on overcoming that initial awkwardness?
Embrace it. Think of it like trying on a new style of clothing. It might feel strange at first, but the more you wear it, the more confident you become. And remember, everyone makes mistakes when learning a language. It's all part of the process.
That's such a great point. It's so easy to get caught up in the pursuit of perfection. But mistakes are actually a sign that we're pushing ourselves and growing. And speaking of pushing ourselves, are there any specific tips for making the most of our repetition practice?
Absolutely. One simple but effective technique is to vary your speed and intonation when repeating the same phrase multiple times. It adds an element of playfulness, and it helps you internalize the nuances of the language. It's like a vocal workout, training your voice to be more flexible.
And expressive. I love that. It takes the monotony out of repetition and turns it into an opportunity to experiment and have fun with the language. It's like being a vocal athlete, pushing your limits and discovering new possibilities.
Exactly. And speaking of pushing limits, let's delve into some more advanced strategies that can really take your listening and repeating skills to the next level. Are you ready for a challenge?
Bring it on. I'm eager to discover how we can refine these foundational skills and make them even more powerful.
All right, so let's step up our game with some techniques that go beyond just listening and repeating. One of the most effective methods is intensive listening. It's like taking a magnifying glass to the language, dissecting a short audio clip multiple times, each time, with a laser focus on a different aspect.
Ooh, intensive listening. That sounds pretty hardcore. What kind of things would you focus on during those multiple listens?
Well, the first listen might be for overall comprehension. Just getting the gist of what's being said. Then you might zero in on pronunciation, noticing how individual sounds are produced, where the speaker places emphasis within words, and how their intonation rises and falls.
So it's like becoming a language detective, peeling back the layers of the audio to uncover all those hidden details. I imagine this will be especially helpful for identifying those subtle nuances that often trip us up as learners.
Exactly, and you can even focus on specific elements that you find challenging. For example, if you struggle with a sound, pay extra attention to how native speakers articulate it during your intensive listening sessions.
That's a great tip. It's like having a personalized training program for your ears. You mentioned another advanced technique earlier, dictation. That takes me back to my school days. But I have a feeling you're going to present it in a whole new light.
Dictation may seem old school, but it's a surprisingly powerful tool for honing your listening accuracy and connecting the spoken word to its written form. It's like a mental workout that strengthens the bridge between listening and writing.
So it's about training your ears to catch every single word and then transcribing it flawlessly. That sounds like a real challenge.
It can be, but that's where the magic happens. As you strain to hear every syllable and punctuation mark, you become acutely aware of the nuances of pronunciation, intonation, even grammar. It's like sharpening your listening skills to a razor's edge.
I can see how that would be incredibly beneficial. And it also reinforces correct spelling and punctuation.
Absolutely. It's a holistic approach that strengthens multiple aspects of your language skills. And here's a pro tip. Don't be afraid to start small. Begin with short, simple sentences and gradually increase the length and complexity of the passages as you gain confidence.
That's reassuring to hear. It's all about building momentum and celebrating those small victories along the way. Now let's shift gears a bit and talk about a concept you touched on earlier. Thinking in English sounds a bit abstract, but I'm intrigued. What exactly does it mean and why is it so important?
Thinking in English is about training your brain to process thoughts directly in English without relying on translation from your native language. It's like rewiring your internal monologue to become more fluent and spontaneous.
That's fascinating, but it also sounds a bit daunting. Do you have any tips on how to start cultivating this habit of thinking in English?
Absolutely. Start with simple, everyday activities. As you're getting dressed in the morning, for example, narrate your actions in your head. I'm putting on my shirt. Now I'm tying my shoes. It might seem silly at first, but it's an effective way to get your brain thinking in English.
It's like providing a running commentary on your life in English.
Okay.
I love that. And as we get more comfortable, can we start incorporating more complex thoughts and even internal conversations?
Exactly. Start asking yourself questions in English. What should I have for breakfast today? Or what are my goals for this week? Challenge yourself to think through problems and make decisions using English as your mental language.
That's a great idea. It's like turning everyday moments into mini immersion experiences. And I imagine that over time, thinking in English becomes more and more natural, almost second nature.
Exactly. It's like building a mental muscle. The more you use it, the stronger it gets. And here's another powerful technique that can accelerate your progress. Role-playing.
Role-playing, that brings back memories of drama class. But how can we apply it to language learning?
Well, role-playing allows you to practice real-life situations in a safe and controlled environment. It's like a dress rehearsal. For those everyday interactions, that can sometimes feel intimidating. You can practice ordering food at a restaurant, asking for directions, even having a job interview, all from the comfort of your own home.
That's a brilliant way to build confidence and fluency. And I imagine it's even more fun and effective if you have a language partner to practice.
Absolutely. You can take turns playing different roles and challenge each other to use a variety of vocabulary and grammar structures. It's like a collaborative game. That makes the learning more engaging and dynamic.
And if you don't have a language partner, you can still practice solo.
Absolutely. Just use your imagination. Visualize different scenarios and respond out loud as if you were actually in those situations. The key is to get comfortable using the language in a variety of contexts and to practice thinking on your feet.
That's great advice. It's all about pushing yourself beyond your comfort zone and embracing the challenge of spontaneous communication. Now, we've talked a lot about practice, but what about feedback? How can our listeners ensure they're on the right track and making progress?
Feedback is crucial. If you have a teacher or a language partner, don't hesitate to ask for their input. They can provide valuable insights into your strengths and weaknesses, helping you identify areas for improvement.
It's like having a personal language coach in your corner, guiding you towards success. And if you're practicing solo, are there any ways to get that essential feedback?
Absolutely. One of the most effective techniques is recording yourself speaking. It might feel a bit awkward at first, but it's a powerful way to identify areas where you can improve.
That's a great tip. Sometimes it's hard to hear our own mistakes, so recording ourselves can provide a fresh perspective and valuable insights. And remember, listeners, don't be afraid to experiment and try different techniques to see what works best for you.
Exactly. The beauty of language learning is there's no one-size-fits-all approach. It's about finding what resonates with you and incorporating the strategies into your daily routine.
And speaking of daily routines, are there any simple habits we can cultivate to make those listening and repeating skills a natural part of our lives? So are there any simple habits we can cultivate to make those listening and repeating skills a natural part of our lives?
Absolutely. One of the easiest and most enjoyable ways is to immerse yourself in English media. Watch movies and TV shows, listen to music and podcasts, all in English, of course, and don't just passively consume the content. Engage with it. Try to sing along to your favorite songs, repeat lines from movies, and even imitate the accents and intonation of different characters.
That's a great way to make learning fun and engaging. It's like turning your entertainment time into a language learning adventure. And I imagine that over time, these activities start to feel less like work and more like a natural part of your day.
Exactly. The more you surround yourself with English, the more comfortable you'll become with the sounds, rhythms, and nuances of the language. It's like creating an English-speaking environment in your own mind.
That's such a powerful image. And speaking of powerful, let's not forget about the power of visualization.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a bit about how visualization can help us achieve our language learning goals?
Visualization is a powerful tool that can help you stay motivated and focused on your goals. Imagine yourself speaking English fluently and confidently in different situations, ordering food at a restaurant, giving a presentation at work, having a conversation with native speakers. See yourself succeeding and feel the sense of accomplishment that comes with it.
That's a great tip. It's about creating a mental picture of success and using that image to fuel your motivation and overcome any doubts or fears you might have. And I imagine that the more vivid and detailed those visualizations are, the more impactful they become.
Exactly. Engage all your senses. Imagine the sounds of the language, the feeling of your tongue, forming the words, the expressions on people's faces as they understand you perfectly. The more immersive the experience, the more effective it will be.
That's amazing advice. It's like turning language learning into a mental movie where you're the star of the show. And speaking of shows, are there any other creative ways to make practice more fun and engaging?
Absolutely. One of my favorite techniques is to turn everyday activities into language learning opportunities. For example, if you're cooking dinner, try describing the recipe in English. Or, if you're going for a walk, narrate your surroundings in English. It's about finding those little moments throughout your day where you can seamlessly integrate English into your life.
That's such a clever idea. It's like turning the world around you into a giant language learning playground. And I imagine that the more you do this, the more natural and effortless speaking English becomes.
Exactly. It's about breaking down the barriers between study time and real life and making English an integral part of your everyday experience. And remember, the key to success is consistency. Even if you can only spare a few minutes each day, those small efforts will accumulate over time and lead to significant progress.
That's so encouraging to hear. It's all about making those small, consistent efforts and trusting that they will pay off in the long run. And speaking of the long run, are there any strategies we can use to stay motivated and avoid those inevitable slunks that can sometimes derail our progress?
Absolutely. One of the most effective strategies is to set realistic goals and celebrate your achievements along the way. Don't try to do too much too soon. Start with small, achievable goals and gradually increase the difficulty as you gain confidence. And don't forget to reward yourself for your hard work, whether it's a small treat or a fun activity. Those little celebrations can help you stay motivated and on track.
That's such a great reminder. It's so easy to get caught up in the pursuit of fluency and forget to acknowledge our progress along the way. Celebrating those small wins is crucial for maintaining momentum and keeping our spirits high. And speaking of high spirits, let's talk about the importance of having fun and enjoying the journey. Learning a language shouldn't feel like a chore, right?
Absolutely. When you're having fun, you're more likely to stick with it and make significant progress. So find ways to make learning enjoyable for you. Watch funny movies, listen to upbeat music, play language games, whatever sparks your interest and keeps you engaged.
That's fantastic advice. It's about finding those activities that make you smile and turning them into opportunities to learn and grow. Well, hey, this has been an absolutely fascinating deep dive. I've learned so much.
Yeah.
And I really appreciate you taking the time to share your expertise with us.
It's been my pleasure. I'm always happy to talk about the power of language learning.
And to our listeners, we hope you enjoyed this episode and that you're feeling inspired to put these techniques into practice.
Remember, the key to success is to be consistent, patient, and most importantly, have fun with it.
Thank you for listening to the Speak Smart podcast. Feel free to subscribe to my channel, like this video, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on future deep dives. Until next time, happy learning.